Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Passive House Financing Panel. We're very excited to have this opportunity to speak to you all about the various mechanisms for Passive House financing, not only in Colorado, but opportunities that are available across the nation. And we have an esteemed group of panelists today that I'm very excited for everyone to hear from. Just quickly, I am Katelyn Meehan. I am a member of the Passive House Network Board. I am a director at Wells Fargo in their Community Lending and Investment Group, which is a nationwide platform that focuses on investing in affordable housing. We provide debt, LIHTC equity, New Markets Tax Credit equity, and CDFI financing throughout the country for affordable housing purposes. So I would love for the panelists to be able to introduce themselves, and then they'll do a brief overview of the work that they're focused on and their perspective of financing Passive House, and then we'll go into a moderated Q&A. Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and I am so happy to be here. I have to say, about 16 years ago, I worked with the Boulder Green Building Guild, which is now the Colorado Green Building Guild. And about 16 years ago, we would bring in experts in different building fields, and occasionally we would have a Passive House speaker. So it's really exciting to be here now to see 300 people here, 300 people online, very interested in Passive House. So my name is Heather Breathwaite. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for the Colorado Clean Energy Fund. We are Colorado's Green Bank, and I'm excited to share with you how we may be able to support Passive House.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kevin Morse. I am Managing Director of Imperial Ridge Real Estate Capital. We are a national CPACE capital provider, and I'll be talking primarily about CPACE. In a prior life, I was also a Wells Fargo employee, so Katelyn and I have something in common there. And then in between Wells and Imperial Ridge, I was in the solar space, so bring a little bit of expertise from both worlds to the CPACE market.
My name is Mark Lyles. I'm Associate Director of Codes and Policy at New Buildings Institute, and I promise you I know the least amount of financing out of everyone up here on this stage. I'm trained as an architect, and I do a lot of work in the codes and policy field, but one of the consistent messages we always hear, especially around net zero buildings, is they're too expensive to build. So I am leaning into that and working with CPACE and really trying to kind of target higher levels of performance. So it's been a bit of a learning curve for me, but happy to be up here and learn from the rest of these experts.
Good morning. My name is Shane Poland. I am principal of PS Ventures. That stands for Passionate and Sustainable Ventures. I'm neither a lender nor am I a policy person. I'm a real estate developer who for about the last 20 years has focused on building buildings that are better than code minimum and overcoming, I think, a lot of the obstacles that a lot of people generally perceive to be associated with trying to do better. And so I believe I was asked to be here to share some of those perspectives in how to talk about Passive House and see value in Passive House. And I hope to do that today. Well, I'm going to talk about value, but I'll say the first thing of this question, which I'll get to. But I'm going to start off by saying that the question of how much more does Passive House cost is the wrong question because it completely ignores the idea of value. And again, I'll get into this when the slides come up, but I think it's an important first concept. First cost is one component, particularly in long-term holding. And if you focus exclusively on first cost, then you're missing the boat, in my opinion. Okay, so again, try to focus here on value. Next slide. Again, this is a little bit about me and my company. Probably about 2000, again, you can read a little about PS Ventures, but needless to say, those of you who have spoken to me or meet me here, you will realize that passionate is not a misnomer in this context, and I'm really excited about the types of buildings that I'm able to work on. My first exposure to high-performance green building was that building in the top left corner. It was an office building. It was being built for a company I was working for, members of my own family. And it's relevant now to Passive House, even though that building was in design in 2005. It was in design before LEED was required in the jurisdiction in which we worked. And we were long-term holders, the family, my own family that I was working with. And I first went to them and asked if we could build a green building. That I thought that made a lot of sense. We were going to move into this building. It was going to be partly our corporate headquarters. And my family relatively understandably said, no, we're not building a green building. It costs too much money. Nobody cares about that. Show me where they pay higher rent. Show me where, all the similar things we hear about Passive House today. But quickly, the ultimate winning argument that I made is that these new buildings were coming and that we were long-term holders and we would not be occupying the whole building and we would have leases that would expire and we would need to rent to new tenants. And so our choice was simple, that in the term of the first lease, 5 years, 10 years, new buildings would be there, in that case in the form of LEED buildings. And we could either be the first of those new generation of buildings, or we could be the last of the old generation of buildings and be competing with them. And that apparently was the winning argument. And then my career is run from there. We then went to the city of Frederick, built the city's first Energy Star and LEED for Homes Gold project. We ultimately did move out of our headquarters. That building we built to a LEED standard, and ultimately we were rewarded with a government lease who had a preference for green buildings, for LEED buildings at a time when they were not required. And so with the benefit of that success, we went and built a number of buildings to ever increasing levels of LEED. This is the current project that this has all evolved to. I'm working in partnership with a wonderful partner, the Affordable Housing Authority of the jurisdiction in which I work. It's the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County, Maryland. They're a wonderful partner, and when they saw the type of buildings that we were building, high-performance buildings, resilient buildings, durable buildings, they were on board. And so that's led to Hillendale Gateway. It's an all-electric, multi-building, mixed-use project. It's on the Capitol Beltway, which is the ring highway that surrounds Washington, D.C. It's going to be delivered in a single phase. It just broke ground this summer, and it's going to take, I think, a total of 41 months to build. Here we see 463 total homes, 1,200 residents, and it's a mixed income, again, in recognition of our partnership with the Affordable Housing Authority. And again, it's a great public-private partnership. I'm partnered with members of my family, the Duffy family, partnered with PS Ventures and HOC, and we got some really ambitious goals. You see them here. I'm not sure there's a logo that we are not going after on this project. This is the general philosophy behind the way that I develop with PS Ventures. It's not something that I invented. You've seen it before. People, planet, profit. And profit is important here, I'm going to point it out, even though that our partner is an Affordable Housing Authority, because it's a mixed income project. And the market rate portions of the project help support the mission of the remaining affordable portions of the project. This is how we're trying to get a blend of income and to have it be financially viable. So that's an important component of this. Again, for my career, I focused on building above code minimum. What does that mean? We all know there's basic code, and then there are all those standards above, and we think that the Passive House standard in one of its two flavors, still relatively annoyed by the whole difference, but it's science-based, and that's where it needs to ultimately go. This is something I put together to try to describe and answer the question when I say it's cost isn't the right first question. The right question should be, is it worth it? These are the reasons why I believe it's worth it. And they have to do with everything you see here. Comfort. Now I'm going to hit on that one. The last panel was fantastic for those who are here on multifamily. But I'm going to point out that certain elements where if we're going to design buildings, but we require user intervention, like a move-in gift of a sweater, or that they have to move an exterior shade, I think we might be careful to not jeopardize our ability to claim that our Passive House buildings are more comfortable. If people are overheating, if people feel like if you're requiring action that they don't need to do in a regular building, just something to keep in mind. But I think fundamentally we're building buildings that are capable of being a lot more comfortable, more resilient, more durable, right? Lower energy. You can read through here and see, but that code compliance one I'll hit on briefly. The codes are getting more stringent all the time. And projects take, particularly large-scale projects, take a long time. And I've heard of projects who have gotten trapped where they got trapped in a code cycle. Project got delayed, buildings were drawn, code changed, throwaway plans. So this is also, in a way, a preventative measure by building to these standards to know that we're building buildings that are not going to have a problem with their drawings immediately after. Obviously, there's lots of incentives, organizational identity, it's how we've gotten the business. I'm gonna run through here quickly. The idea here is that what do most people know about passive house? This is a very technical audience here. So we see lots of slides with 1,000 BTUs per square foot and EUI numbers and psi values. But if you just go out and research what most folks, including lenders, I would imagine, are gonna look at, you're gonna see some commonalities. I'm just gonna run through here quick. No drafts, right? Free of noise, airtight, keep the heat. And look at these titles, apartments may never pay a heating bill, comfortable in the summer. This is just a normal Google search. And they're constantly, the more buildings that we come out, this is what people are seeing and reading when they go out. So it's clear that homes built to the passive house standard have certain characteristics. These are them. There's only 14 of them. This, I'm really, we were trying to understand how to express this information. I was very proud of my team working together to come up with what we call this the Christmas tree. You'll see why in a second. But these are the 14 elements that if you research, again, this is not talking about technical data. This is what it means to occupants of the buildings. What does it mean to them? And here they are. And it's things we know, right? Controlled humidity, they use less energy, of course, fewer odors. By the way, odors and noise, just go also type into the internet, what are the top complaints in multifamily? Odors and noise are almost always in the list, but what do we do to address them in most buildings? Not much. So passive house is a means of addressing them. So I would argue that those characteristics embody certain qualities that we want to market in all of our buildings and that the banks probably want to know that our buildings are. They're comfortable, healthy, durable, resilient, efficient. Okay, so we got these 14 things. These are the things that make them comfortable. These are the things that make them durable. It's the same things, many of them. That's how it's so hard to describe when we were trying to. I looked at lots of primers. Passive House Accelerator has a wonderful materials on primers, but we're trying to see how do you express the relationship between all this, and this is what we've come up with. A lot of these elements are really overlapping. Okay, so how do you achieve these characteristics? If these are the 14 things that make these buildings desirable by being high quality, resilient, durable, efficient, well, that's passive house. That's how you get those things. Super insulation, the air sinks, all the things that we know. There's what super insulation gets you. There's what air sealing gets you. By the way, all of them. Thermal breaks, high efficiency, balanced ventilation with heat recovery, high efficiency systems, and there it is all put together. And I'm not talking, again, like this is what it means to people who are living in the buildings. We get stuck in the technical sometimes, but I think we need to think about these things. And in any event, I think this is where the money is going. There are more articles about this all the time, but I think that institutional investors, even particularly talking about large-scale buildings, they want to show that their portfolios are full of high-performing buildings. It takes a team. I've got a team from all over the country to help bring projects like Hillendale to fruition. So thank you to all the team members. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
That was fantastic. That's the pitch right there. I'm going to come at it from a little bit of a different angle. and tell a bit of a story about this opportunity that was presented to us. And it was really came out of a partnership with a lender called Pace Equity out of Milwaukee. And they approached us being New Buildings Institute, about really wanting to go further and kind of build on this kind of above code program. And they saw us kind of as being experts. You know, we're really familiar with the code and how to advance the code. So we kind of did an analysis for them and identified some opportunities that I want to tell the story of. So like I said, kind of in my introduction, you know, we often hear about expense and financing as being a barrier. So that's kind of really why I wanted to lean into this work and this project. And also kind of inspired the name of my presentation, The Missing Pace, a little bit of a pun there. Just that next slide is just a little bit about New Buildings Institute, like who we are. You can go and I have the controller. We are a nonprofit organization based in Portland, Oregon. We kind of have a vision for getting our buildings to zero emissions, and we do it kind of really across 3 program areas: leadership and market development, building and program innovation, and advancing codes and policy, kind of leaning to all of those areas in order to achieve that mission. You know, when we talk about carbon neutral buildings, we really see it as kind of, there are core components to a carbon neutral building, leading with energy efficiency, then prioritizing on-site renewables, offsetting the rest through off-site renewables, and then really kind of measuring that. And then there's additional components to that that we all kind of are familiar with: electrification, building grid integration, low GWP refrigerants, and then also thinking about building materials. So, you know, these are all the things that are kind of informing our thinking as we go into fulfilling our mission and our vision. When it comes to CPACE, and like I said, I'm relatively new to the CPACE scene, but I really kind of see it as an opportunity, a mechanism that we haven't really thought too much about. And the truth is, it's, you know, the number of projects and the financing, it's really exploding, similar to kind of Passive House, actually. And, you know, you see the number of states that have adopted CPACE financing. It's up to 39 states, I believe now, representing 80% of the US population. And, you know, new construction is only going to continue to drive that. So, you know, we really saw this as an opportunity to jump in and see how we can make an impact by working with this mechanism. So, like I said, this product, that the market-facing name of it is Cirrus Low Carbon, but it really kind of came out of this partnership that we collaborated with Pace Equity on, and really what they brought to the table was the ability to provide a lower rate for buildings that meet that higher level of performance. And then they kind of turned to us to kind of set what that criteria was for higher levels of performance was, and they sell it as a kind of win-win. And a lot of kind of what they provide is, in terms of their service, is kind of also in-house support and engineering. So they're selling the product, but they're also supporting developers and designers and kind of helping meet the requirements. Just a little bit about, this is kind of one of their slides that they use to talk about the Cirrus offering. And then this is kind of their pitch. This is kind of really their sales pitch. So a project will come to them that is, you know, qualifying for CPACE financing. And then they kind of do a pre-screen on it, and then they look at kind of what the incremental cost is to go to the next level, that being the Cirrus. So they in-house price it, and you can see there that $230,000 kind of incremental cost to go beyond kind of the base requirements of what the CPACE costs were. And then you can kind of see all the benefits, you know, over 4 years, kind of the reduced interest rate, the value, energy savings, and then the total savings of that investment. And it's a pretty compelling story for them to tell. And, you know, they've had a lot of interest and people are picking it up and going for it. But a lot of it is also them being able to market it and tell that story. So we help them develop the building specification and kind of what the criteria and requirements are. We're also doing the verification, is what we call it. So once the project has screened, kind of goes through the process, they do kind of their internal, compiling of all the details, and then they send it over to us, and then we make sure that everything all the boxes have been checked, basically. And then in addition to kind of getting the Cirrus plaque, MBI recognizes them kind of for their leadership efforts, the developer, the firms that have kind of gone through it. We've ran 10 projects kind of through this, what we would call kind of this beta testing phase. Bo Engman, who's the CEO of Pace Equity, he like really sees us as kind of moving the market. In terms of, none of the projects that came to them that qualified for CPACE, none of them actually already met all the requirements that are in the spec. So that was encouraging. They're already kind of having that impact and kind of going for that higher level of performance. That was always kind of the driving mission for this. We're seeing kind of, 60-40 split between new construction and existing buildings. Granted, this is only through 7 projects where we took on another 3 kind of since this slide was compiled. The main thing is we're gathering this information and kind of feeding it back and kind of helping to create a feedback loop as part of the program. Going forward, one of the things that I've really seen as a real benefit of this relationship is, we've been able to talk to Pace Equity about what it means to be a high performance building. They were not familiar with Passive House when they first came to us, and I kind of introduced it to them, and they're very interested. And kind of the next step in our relationship is really to kind of go for more of an aspirational level to the program and build in a Passive House tier within the program, which I think I'm really excited about. This is being driven by a couple different things. A lot of states, the code is advancing very quickly. This is a slide that I got from FIAS. This is all the tiny script along the bottom of the screen are states, and the giant blue bars are the states where basically they've aligned their codes with Passive House. Massachusetts, New York, and then Pennsylvania through the QAP. So these states and these programs are leapfrogging very quickly kind of what we've developed, and we need to get out there and go to that next tier of performance, which is Passive House. And then while we do that, we also have to think about what we call the kind of 5 foundations of zero carbon building. So we're doing the efficiency kind of through the Passive House approach. But then we're also thinking about, grid integration and storage. We obviously want those buildings to be 100% electric. And then also thinking about materials. So that's kind of really the guiding principles as we kind of target that next level of performance. And that's an overview of where we are. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Very good. You guys are going to hear a lot about CPACE today. I'll go into a little bit more of the details about CPACE, where it is, some of the benefits, how it works, et cetera. A little bit more about Imperial Ridge. We're a small team located here in Colorado, headquartered in Boulder. And we're all outdoor enthusiasts, love to take advantage of the mountains, the waters. My partners are big fishermen and rafters as well. And protecting that not only for ourselves and our own personal enjoyment, but for our kids and future generations is what drove us to get into CPACE and drive, help drive and accelerate better buildings. All right. So basic introductions. First of all, let me do a little quiz here. Who's familiar with CPACE and knows what it is? All right, about a third or so of the group. bear with me here for those of you who are familiar with it. I'm going to do a 101 here. How many do we have that are developers, builders, that sort of thing? Got a few, great. Any government folks, state, local? Okay, awesome, good mix. All right, so PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. Frankly, I don't love the name, the acronym. We prefer Property Assessed Capital Expenditures because obviously there are some markets in the country that hear clean energy and tune out immediately. But it goes well beyond what most people think of as clean energy, as solar or wind. That's just a small part of what we do. But like most acronyms, I think people try to figure out words to go with the acronym rather than the reverse. So CPACE, or commercial PACE, centers around the concept of tax assessments for infrastructure improvements. So it was created in the same kind of model of like a sewer improvement, street, sidewalks. You think of water lines or firehouses, where it's a public benefit. It's financed in either the public or private markets, and then the community is assessed on their tax bill for those improvements. So the concept of better buildings and lower energy use and cleaner air drove this as PACE to be a public benefit, that we're providing a public good by having cleaner buildings. It truly is a public-private partnership form of financing. The public piece is that each state has to pass legislation to enable the program. So they pass enabling laws that allow local governments to offer PACE financing. That's the public piece. The private piece is that all PACE is privately financed. So there's no public dollars that go into PACE financing. There's actually the state or local jurisdictions actually have a small form of revenue that come from it, from the services they provide, but there's no tax dollars that go into it. It's all privately funded. And so the enabling laws that are put in place by the state legislature and then adopted by the local jurisdictions or counties enable private capital like Imperial Ridge to fund building improvements with the authority to collect the repayment through a tax assessment or security. So the thing that's great from a lender perspective is that we're secured by a tax lien on the property, not a mortgage. And the taxing authority, in most places it's the county, become our collection agency. So when we finance a property, we submit a repayment schedule or assessment schedule to the county that then puts it on the tax roll for that parcel. And some places, some states, we privately we service ourselves, and it doesn't go through the taxing authority, but most places it does. And so you'll see, instead of a mortgage statement like you would typically get for a mortgage that you pay every month, that payment now is on the tax bill, property tax bill for the property. So what can we finance? Again, property assessed clean energy, obviously we can finance solar and any renewable energy, wind, geothermal, et cetera. PACE can be used for both retrofits and new construction. So we do a mix of both. A year or two ago, when new construction was all that was getting done, we saw a lot of that. Now that rates have gone up and that's slowed down, we're seeing a lot more retrofits. But within those verticals, We can do anything that's energy related, so any energy efficiency improvements can be financed through PACE, as well as obviously renewable energy. In many states, they've included water conservation, so low flow toilets, showers, faucets, etc., can be included. And then in several states, resiliency or hazard mitigation can be included. So states on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, we include seismic improvements, and California included fire mitigation the last couple of years ago. Florida has included wind hardening, so hurricane proofing. Virginia just included flood proofing and water, stormwater improvements, as Washington as well. And obviously, anything that would qualify under a green building certification typically qualifies or is eligible for PACE financing. So what are the advantages of it? There are multiple. First of all, we can finance 100% of the cost of those measures. So if it's a retrofit and you're just doing a new HVAC system, lighting, windows, we can finance 100% of all those costs, hard and soft costs. And so it really helps get over the hurdle that we hear a lot from building owners, that how am I going to pay for this? And use an example, City of New York has implemented some very, very aggressive mandates in terms of improving buildings. And of course, all the building owners are just like, there's no way I can pay for this. CPACE can take care of that for you. I've mentioned non-recourse. What that means is there's no personal guarantees by the building owner. So that's very attractive. Most bank financing, they're personally guareteeing the mortgage. Non-accelerating, that is very attractive to the mortgage holders and banks, and I'll mention that aspect of PACE in a little bit. But the other piece is it's long-term financing, and that's really critical in making energy efficiency improvements viable. Instead of your typical equipment financing or short-term financing that has to be repaid over 5 or even 10 years, it's hard to make those cash flow for windows or roofing. It's specifically. When you can repay them over 25 or even 30 years, it really helps make the whole project cash flow right out of the gate, because it provides a low cost annually. And then the energy savings that are produced from those improvements can pay for the financing and then some. It can be used as a substitute for mezzanine financing. And those who are not familiar with that, I'll just tell you it's a lot more expensive. So it's a much cheaper form of capital than alternatives like that or additional equity. One of the main things that is also really attractive and a big selling point is it's fully transferable on sale, which means that when you sell the property, those tax assessments that are repaying the PACE stay with the property. So you're not forced to repay the PACE financing when you sell the property. So that's a huge advantage, because you're improving the building. Then the buyer is going to get an improved building when they take that over, with lower energy costs. And again, that all pays for the PACE financing in most cases. So the other thing that's really attractive to building owners is you've put this money into the building to improve it. Let's say you put $1 million of improvements into the building. Theoretically, let's say you sell the building for $1 million more. You've paid $200,000 off of it, of the PACE. There's another $800,000 that the new owner is going to continue to pay over that time, and that $1 million increase in the property value flows right to the seller's pocket. So that's obviously very attractive to building owners. In addition, one of the obstacles is probably most of you know is what we call the split incentive for building owners, especially in the office market, where the tenants are paying the energy bill. And so it's always been difficult to entice building owners to improve their buildings when they don't get the benefit directly to them. The tenants get the benefit from lower energy costs. And so with PACE, because it is a tax assessment in triple net lease situations, because it's a tax, it can be passed through under your triple net lease contracts. So the tenants actually pay for those improvements, and they obviously get the offset of the benefit, their lower costs of the building as well. So it eliminates that. In terms of where PACE is, you can see in the blue, these are the active markets. So it is most of the country. The dark green is pending. I think we're down to one dark green area right now, which is New Jersey. That's been dark green for about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. But we think we're close now. We've actually got guidelines that are being commented on. But again, it's most of the country, and I can tell you as a national CPACE lender, we're doing business pretty much throughout all of those active markets. So it's exciting to see that there's strong interest everywhere that there is PACE. So hopefully we'll get those bigger markets on board, bigger real estate markets like Phoenix and Charlotte and South Carolina as well. But eventually they'll be shamed into it. There's my contact info. I put that photo up there as a reference from our website. So if you want to dig around on our website, I'll give you a hint. Look in the bio section, and you'll see what that's all about.
How many people in the audience have heard of what a green bank is? Oh, good. Okay. Wonderful. Because the Colorado Clean Energy Fund is Colorado's green bank, and that's what I'm going to speak to as soon as the slides are ready. I'm going to talk about things other than CPACE, other products that we have to support the Passive House network and endeavor. But we are partners with CPACE lenders and like to support that avenue of financing as well. And I'll talk more about that in my presentation. The first slide that I'm going to show actually is a photo of a building. Last week, I had an opportunity to do some motorcycling in the countryside of Croatia. And it was about 87 degrees. We had done about 85 miles, 100 miles. We pulled into this little stone village. It was actually a family-owned small batch winery that had been in existence for over 400 years. So I'm sitting at the table enjoying some food with my friends, and we're talking to one of the family members, and he was telling us about the buildings, and the roofs have not been replaced in 400 years. Now remember I said 85 to 90 degrees outside, been riding motorcycles. I walked into the building, and it was cool as a cucumber. So I was sitting there, and I knew that I had this conference coming up, and it really had me, I just started thinking, like, Passive House has been around for a long time, but that concept isn't flowing in my network, right? 100% electrification is, renewables are, but not Passive House. So it got me really excited to come here so that I could meet more people to understand how our financing can support Passive House so that we can start building, we are already building and retrofitting buildings. They may not have roofs for 400 years, but they're going to perform a lot better. So we are a nonprofit, 501c3. We are not a traditional bank lending institution. We are a mission-first organization, really looking to decarbonize buildings and transportation. We have flexible capital. What does that mean? It means we can look at things a little bit differently, and our cost of capital and terms on our capital are different. Why is that important? He mentioned that, longer terms can help these energy projects pencil from day one. That is really important. It's really important in Colorado because we're only lending in Colorado because all of you may know, our energy prices really aren't that high. We aren't Hawaii, we aren't Massachusetts, we aren't Connecticut. So it's even harder for us to get to that cash flow positive from day one. So we really need the low cost capital in the longer terms. We were capitalized in November of 2021 with $30 million from the state. That is to be used for debt and credit enhancements. Credit enhancements, if you are not familiar with those, they are, an example would be a loan loss reserve where we can put up money, pots of money, so that we can bring in additional capital on the outside. And that kind of lets them sleep well at night, knowing if anything was to go bad, they'd have a loan loss reserve sitting on the side to make things whole. So our purpose is to expand access into markets. So where we are going to be filling gaps, where traditional banks will be lending, where there are gaps and things can't get financed, we're able to look at projects a little bit differently. We're supporting the deeper energy greenhouse gas savings, again, because we can do these different types of projects and make them work. And we are supporting markets. We're supporting markets by talking to people and finding out where the gaps are and where our capital really should be flowing. Again, we fill the gaps. And how do we do that? Small project financing. We were talking earlier, PACE is an excellent, excellent product, and it's one in our quiver, and it should be in all the quivers. But sometimes PACE isn't the right product because it might be too small of a project. So when the economics aren't right for PACE, there's other options, and we provide those options. Rural project financing. We do a lot of work with rural, particularly right now in residential, and I'll speak to that later in the presentation. Again, long tenor financing, medium credit quality financing. We look at things a little bit differently because we're not a traditional financial institution. We really are looking at the clean energy aspects and the energy savings they're going to bring and how that will compare to the debt that is required for the project. Markets we serve, commercial and residential properties, commercial properties, multifamily, HOAs, nonprofits, the cannabis sector, and agriculture. Residential properties, homeowners, and renters. Renters coming soon, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. So I have a lot of slides on our loan products. I'm just going to go over them quickly. I'm sure you'll be able to access this after the event is over. Our first project is something called the Energy Project Accelerator Loan, Energy POW. Energy POW, I'm just going to hit on the highlights of why these products are important in our market right now. It goes out to 10 years, and the interest rates are 4 to 6%. So interest rates have been on the incline, unfortunately. So our capital is 4 to 6%. Throughout our products, except for residential, because I'm speaking to commercial right now. This particular product, we use a UCC1 filing, so this is not tied to real estate. Where we see this product working best is as a bridge loan. A lot of these projects that are coming through, large projects, particularly affordable multifamily, or solar projects, there may be, let's stop on the solar project for just a second. There are state agencies that offer grants, right? REAP grants. And those grants, they don't pay for the project up front. They come in a year and a half later. Well, what is a developer supposed to do when that happens, right? So we're able to bridge that, and we actually collateralize that grant. And when that grant comes in, that's what pays the loan. So this is where this product has really worked well, and also in pre-development. The clean conversion loan, this is a longer tenor loan. This goes out to 15 years. This is secured by real estate. So we typically use this product when we have larger projects that we're trying to pencil and get to cash flow. Again, we have the low rates and long terms. We also do CPACE lending, but where we play in this market are the smaller deals, because remember, we fill the gaps. So I'm going to let him do his job and do projects. But when projects come to him that are like $100,000, $250,000, it may not be optimal for PACE. So we have products, our CPACE product can fit that, or our other debt products can fit that project. Finally, we have something called an LED lighting loan. Often we'll get access to different buckets of capital. This bucket of capital actually is 3.45% interest rate. Yeah, you don't really hear those numbers anymore. So anyone doing LED lighting projects in the state of Colorado, I recommend that they come talk to us about that. Finally, we have a whole suite of multifamily affordable housing products. We have the affordable pre-development loan, affordable construction loan, and the perm loan. I will tell you, we have not done the construction loan or the permanent loan. We have been focused on the pre-development part of this. Predominantly when it comes to the engineering or the environmental studies. There's a lot that has to go into helping you all create these better buildings, right? The engineering. So we can actually step in up front and cover the cost of those types of efforts to get the buildings to where they need to be. The process is pretty easy. On our website, there's a submit a project. You submit your project, we ask for a little bit of information, and then we'll do an introductory call for you, get to know your project better, and we can help you figure out what product would be best for your project. We also have, our staff is not just finance, it's clean energy and finance. So they're able to North Star, we call North Star, or help people understand what they should do in their buildings if that's needed. Now I'm going to speak just briefly on our residential programs. We've actually been running a residential program. It's called Renew. For 6 years, we've done $60 million in lending to homeowners for energy efficiency projects. We partner with credit unions in this particular instance. So Westera Credit Union, Elevations Credit Union. We use our money in this instance as a loan loss reserve so that these credit unions are going to offer lower rates into the market. So mostly 80% of that volume has been solar. And we're really working now to figure out how to broaden that. Particularly in the area of heat pumps. So hoping to see that switch and not be so heavy on the solar side. Finally, we're getting ready to launch something called an on-bill repayment program. I said earlier that we try to help get projects done in rural communities. And Tri-State is a generation and transmission organization, and they have what are called cooperative utilities underneath of them. In the state of Colorado, we have about 18. And so this program is set up for these co-ops. And what is it? So a contractor installs the measure, the homeowner signs the paperwork, and they're going to be paying for the clean energy measures on their energy bill. And it's not debt to the owner. It is tied to the meter of the property, so it is considered a service. We also do not look at a homeowner's financials. We are underwriting this by how well they have paid their utility bill. So if someone has paid their utility bill for 12 months in good standing, and we work with them if they haven't, then they can qualify for up to $75,000 worth of energy upgrades. We are launching that now with SLV Co-op, and we have 4 others in the queue right now. We feel like this is a very, very powerful tool for equitable access to clean energy, and we're really looking forward to that launch. An example of on-bill that we have running already is with the San Miguel Power Utility. There was an affordable development there. workforce housing to support more of the Telluride community. We have to have workers, and there needs to be workforce housing. Well, many of you know to develop affordable housing, sometimes the margins are very thin and the good things get engineered out. Well, we didn't want the good things to get engineered out, like the solar and the heat pumps. So we said, let's just pull those out. Let's pull those out and let's put it on the utility bill. Let's do an on-bill repayment program. So now those homes are better. They have solar, they have heat pumps, and it's transferable. So that homeowner, if they decide to sell their property, it's still with the meter, and that payment is just going to be transferred to the new owner of the home. So we're hoping to see a lot of success in this program across the state, and really hoping to see a lot of clean energy coming to our rural communities. Program design update. We're doing on-bill for residential, commercial, and municipal. We're launching with residential, but commercial and municipal entities will be able to participate eventually. Eligible measures, lighting, heat pumps, really anything in the energy efficiency electrification space. So we want to hear from you. We are a young organization. We are coming up on 2 years and looking to hear from people in the market as to what types of products and what your needs are. So please feel free to contact me if you're interested in learning more about the debt products that we have.
So before we jump into audience Q&A, we did have some questions that we wanted to discuss with the panelists. So I think everyone here, in some shape or form, described the benefit of the public-private partnership. And at least based on the chart that Mark showed in terms of the states meeting their goals, a lot of that is based on whether or not the states have passed building code or a local law in order to incentivize development. So I just maybe wanted to start with Shane and talk about your experience with public-private partnership and how that's potentially benefited your development, and maybe touch on, especially when it relates to developing affordable, how that's been helpful towards you.
Sure. Again, I can't say enough good things about our public partner, the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County. I think the biggest thing is that the public brings a long-term perspective often because they're perpetual holders. And so in my experience, that outlook that you're going to hold the building for decades, and not that there's a problem necessarily with merchant building or developing, it's just a different model. And when you're focused on long-term, the way that often affordable housing authorities and governmental agencies are, then you start making decisions that might make sense over a longer term, like passive house. That question of worth, right, brings in value. How much does it cost? Is it worth it? Worth brings in value, and value is often incorporates time. And so what might seem unfathomable to a merchant builder that looks at something that has a 7-year payback as not worthwhile, that's nothing in the time frame of a long-term holder who's going to be the one who often pays for utility bills over time, pays for the costs associated with improper detailing, right, for water intrusion or mold or things like that we see in the built environment. No one's saving anything by cutting quarters when you're the one who's going to be the one who bears the expense. So I think in our case, having this long-term outlook, our partner has been primarily responsible for the financing of the project. So we are using low-income housing tax credits. We're working with our local green bank. We're working with CPACE. We're doing all of these things. I will say that I was doing this before the partnership. It was sort of our interest and development, what we were doing in high performance building and resilient building is what led to the partnership. So I was doing this when I was doing it as market rate. I would still be doing this if I was doing it market rate. What it meant was I had to get creative in certain ways. So we helped sponsor high performance tax credit legislation in various jurisdictions in which we worked to try to help lower the barrier. We investigated things like accelerated depreciation, utility incentives. I mean, if there's a pot of money out there that would be applicable, we would chase it, and sometimes we would go to try to create it if it wasn't there. So I would encourage everybody to feel that, if go to your jurisdiction and point to the neighboring jurisdiction and see what they can do. But certainly having the affordable housing partner has been helpful. And I think to the degree you're asking about, like, is this important particularly to affordable housing? I'd say yes, it is, for a few reasons. One is to those of limited means. The first one I like to lead is a resiliency argument. To those of limited means, there are fewer options when it gets really hot, where it gets really cold, where it hasn't been hot and it hasn't been cold, like what we saw in the Pacific Northwest and what we saw in Dallas. To those of limited means, you have more limited options. When your home becomes uninhabitable, you or I might be fortunate to go stay with a friend, to go rent a hotel room, go someplace else. But I think there are fewer options to those of limited means. There's always the basic of it's just, even with the split incentive, they're paying lower utility bills. And based on the session before, based on energy data, it appears that affordable housing occupants often are in their homes longer. So if your home is more comfortable, you're in comfort more often. So I think there are a variety of reasons why, particularly in affordable housing, it makes a lot of sense to be building to higher than code minimum.
And sorry, just a quick follow-up, since you mentioned split incentives, how have you addressed that concern?
For our first multifamily, the first building that I showed, that was all utilities included, and so it was a full service lease, and it made sense for us as building owner to minimize our expense. When we then went to our first multifamily, this was a challenge. And I argued that this was an education problem. It sounds basic to remind folks that their monthly expense is both their rent and their utilities, but I think it bears reminding folks that their monthly expense is both their rent and their utilities. Then you need data. So the last panel also talked about sometimes the difficulty of getting data. The utility week had the split incentive problem. They didn't want to give us the data. I knew this going in. So there is a utility data release form that the residents need to sign. I incorporated it into our lease package from startup. And then 12 months in, this was 160 homes. I went with 160 forms to the utility and asked for the data. Once we had the data, then we could tell our prospective residents, hey, there's no, we could say that everyone's different, but on average we have data, and it looks like the average 2-bedroom cost is, say, $50 and the 1-bedroom cost is $30, whatever those numbers were. Don't forget, when you go down the street to the A, the B, and the C, please don't forget to ask them what their utility costs are, because you are going to pay both your rent plus the utilities. The reality is, the dirty secret is that most people won't take you up on that offer. Just the fact that you state it, probably they don't go and ask. You state it with confidence, it's true. For those who do go and ask the question, they will get one of two answers, in my estimation. Either the buildings will not know what the utility data is because they are independently metered, and they might have them for vacants, but not for occupied units, in which case it's a win for us because they don't know. Or they will give the answer if they know the data, but I'm building to passive house and high performance building standards, and so I know my numbers are lower than theirs. And so it became an education problem, so it's really incumbent upon the management team, the building property managers, and the leasing staff to help educate, I think, to overcome this challenge and say that, yes, you might be seeing a face rate that looks higher than when you go down the street, but please recall that is not your total monthly expense. And we have all of these other benefits. I hope that answers.
Yes, thank you. And then, Mark and Kevin, as it relates to CPACE, you're heavily reliant on the local jurisdiction wanting to work with you and then setting benchmarking. So maybe if you could both just speak to areas where you've been more successful or in ways that the public entities have been supportive.
Yeah, I'll take the first pass at that. It seems, based on the projects that have come through PACE Equity, we tried to make it as universal, kind of based, like it doesn't matter what kind of code you're on in terms of your state, that you can still do it. But, the fact of the matter is states with lower performing codes are easier coming into the door. So, but then the benefit is that you're actually improving the buildings in those states. So, we're seeing a lot of projects in the Midwest, Ohio, Missouri, that type of location. And I think it's, for a variety of factors. But certainly I do think that the less stringent the code, it's easier to kind of go for those higher performances. But I think, obviously we're working really hard to kind of raise that code bar in like all jurisdictions. So we also have to be thinking about that from kind of the offering that we're putting together. And that's really kind of why I'm pushing forward to try and get that next tier of performance, so that it doesn't matter where your code is, you're going for the maximum that we know is available, which is passive house. So.
What I guess I'll add to that, and the fun part about my job, and I like to call it job security, is that every state program is different. So there's some general commonalities, but they have nuances that Colorado's program is very different than Texas in a lot of ways, different than Ohio, and then so knowing those details is very important to helping get things done quickly. But and then within each state, whether it's a statewide program like Colorado has, or a specific district or municipality program, more like what Ohio has, you'll see in each of these states that there are pockets that the local jurisdiction hasn't opted in to a program yet. So while the state has legislation and maybe have a program, or the county next to it has a program, the place you're working in, or the building that where the building is located, may not have an active program at the time. And so that's where the local, either the local government entities or the nonprofit administrator can be a huge asset to us in getting deals done. So they're the ones that have the relationship either with the county commissioners or the city mayor or whoever, to be able to get that ordinance passed to enable PACE in the local jurisdiction. And so having those active, engaged, either program administrators or champions, if you will, for PACE is critical. The other thing too, coming from a small team here in Colorado, we are intentionally so. We want to remain this way to keep our costs down, to be able to provide the lowest rates that we can, as well as be the most flexible as we can in structuring. But what that means is we don't have a ton of money for marketing and putting people in every city in the country. So we really rely heavily on the local program administrators to help get the word out. And so where we've seen the most success or the most activity are in states like Texas, like Ohio, like Missouri, where they have really great engaged and networked teams there that are really promoting PACE. So the other thing too that I'll mention is if your local county or city isn't opted into a program, don't let that deter you from pursuing it. A lot of times those local municipalities aren't interested in going through the exercise of writing and passing an ordinance unless there's actually somebody, a contingent, a property owner, a business owner that wants to use it. So a lot of times they're just waiting for that local constituent to come to them and say, I want to use PACE, and then they'll pass it real quickly. So so if that's the case, don't let that slow you down. We can usually get it passed pretty quickly within the time that it takes to underwrite and close a deal.
Thank you. And I have one last question for Heather prior to opening it up to any audience questions, but I did not want to let this session go without mentioning the Inflation Reduction Act and the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which I know there are applications due this week and next, so a lot of people are busy working on that. So I would just like if you could touch on how those funds could impact your work and how it can be leveraged and what your expectations are for those proceeds going forward.
Wow. So for the last month, our organization has been working tirelessly to fill out the applications for all three. There are three applications, and there's teaming. It's a competition. So at this moment, we really don't know much. We know that we're working and finishing our applications. We know what teams we're on. There are teams. We know that there's a lot of money that potentially may come to us. It could come to us as the Colorado Green Bank, and we would just serve Colorado. It could also come to us, and we would be a hub for EPA Region 8. That would be South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. So we could have hyper growth in a matter of about a year. The money that might be available for our state is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And all of that money would be budgeted towards commercial building decarbonization, transportation, and distributed generation across the state. So that's really all we can say right now. We don't know how it's going to work yet, but we know that we're crossing our fingers that our state is able to receive a good chunk of that funding.
Great, thank you. Okay, the gentleman in the back.
Okay, thank you very much. So I had recently a relationship came to me with the poster child of historic building retrofits for upgrades, interfit, et cetera. Probably not more than a $300,000 to $500,000 project, and I cannot find a PACE lender. Is it because it's uneconomic, because the project sizes? I've been a direct lender before, so I understand we want larger deals for efficiency, but that gap in the marketplace, I think, is huge on these retrofits. Any advice?
Yes, so that is a challenge. Heather mentioned she has solutions here in Colorado. We will do deals down to about $300,000, but I always caution clients or prospects that it's not cheap. And the reason that is there's fixed costs to do a CPACE deal regardless of the size. So generally, well, we always require an appraisal. Oftentimes we need a new appraisal if the one hasn't been done in the last 6 months. There's energy engineering reports. There's environmental reports that need to be done. Obviously legal work that needs to be done. So that all of those fixed costs mount up and they need to be, and they can be financed in, but then they're amortized over the life of the deal. Obviously, if you're amortizing those fixed costs over a $10 million deal, the yearly cost is a lot less than if it's a $300,000 deal. So having said that, we're happy to do them. We do them. We just closed a deal of about $250,000, $300,000 down in Texas last week. So it can be done, but it's just a matter of really how people want to spend their time, I guess. We're happy to do them. Others, you know, if their pipeline's full of $10 million deals, then they're going to focus on those. So that's my quick and simple answer.
I'll just tag on to that. So our conversation really was, hey, when you have small deals, you should bring them to the Colorado Clean Energy Fund in Colorado because we don't have a lot of fees. We don't have legal fees. We don't require engineering. That one product I told you about, the Energy POW, it goes to 10 years, or the Clean Conversion, 15 years. UCC one filing only on that. So if a $300,000 project to me goes in the Energy POW. right? For speed and cost reasons. So if we work together, the CPACE, in my opinion, CPACE is the strongest product for projects that are 2 million and above. But it's that small commercial gap. We've been trying to crack the small commercial gap nut for a decade. And now we have the cost of capital to do so and the products to do so. So I think we're filling that gap now. And we are in terms of our portfolio. Our portfolio, I would say 40% of it now is small commercial, meaning deals that are $50,000, and this is commercial, $50,000 to $350,000.
Thank you very much. This is really great information. I'm an architect. We have a firm of experts that work primarily in a mountain town here in Colorado. Our experience is almost exclusively high-end single-family residential, but my team and I are very interested in breaking into the mixed-use multifamily sector and are really struggling to do that through BidNet municipal projects. I'm just wondering if this board has any advice for small firms that are interested in participating and helping with this very serious demand in our area for funding.
I'm happy to help you. We've done a range of multifamily mixed-use projects. I think if your struggle, I think I need to understand your struggle a little more, but if it is the capital and the finance, and particularly the low-cost capital, then I think that we should have a larger conversation after this.
Is the challenge on the finance side or just project in general in terms of pulling it all together?
There's plenty of demand for affordable housing where we are. It's a multi-layered challenge. And maybe we're just looking in the wrong place. We're looking for city of Aspen or town of Carbondale to step up and do the right thing, and that may not be the right path to get projects complete.
Yeah, I certainly sympathize with you. Being in the mountain towns, you've got the challenge of very expensive land, as well as very expensive labor, and getting product up to the mountains as well. So, yeah, it certainly is a challenge to build anything up there. In terms of financing it, we love the resort communities and mountain towns. We've done a lot up there. Our CEO was born and raised up there, and so we feel like we know the sector really well, but it doesn't help in terms of the cost side of it that you're dealing with. So I think you're pursuing the right channels and seeing if the towns or counties can help you out at all with any grants or abatements or whatever that maybe they can do.
Thank you. I want to thank the panelists for your time. I want to thank the audience for participating. I'm sure if you have other questions, you'll be able to find them afterwards, and feel free to come up with any additional questions you have. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.